This is all set up lines of communication. The mind has already set up the platform to everybody in sequence. Now we just have to identify through codifications. I'm going to keep saying that because we have to truly understand how to modify these things and set track locations. Understand your polarities. Now there's, like I said, there's 3 polarities, position locations. Left is screen lines and set position on levels. The space line, connection to the right line, earth line, course center location setting is the position line track correlation setting, high position location to its female track correlation. Space is lines is male, set position with earth location is female. Okay, that is a foundation grounds. Foundations of mother is the position locations to all levels of awareness. Spaceline communication lines is all levels of father, which is all levels of track correlation setting and travel. That puts all lines of all communication settings when it comes into the all communication to its surface. Now, understanding that through tractions, knowing exactly how to use that into the male polarity, the spaceline, and how to use the female polarity in the earth line. The center core system, right? So the actualization settings, it puts everything in calculation to its system. The center core of you is the center track location. Okay, into that lines puts everything into the realism, where you are in your spectrum, where you are in your light, and where you are in your dark. There's 2 lines of communication setting to dualities. 2 dualities into one. One center core system of odd calculation, all back in set position. What we have to truly identify is how to communicate to our Earth in a film projector and track location to its settings. And that line position locations, when we get into space, we're in modification to open lines of frequencies now at all levels and settings. Your body is no longer in control, okay, which means everything is now remote viewing. Get a remote viewing of the Earth and get a remote viewing of the space in the same time measure, in the same balance, and the same polarities existing all at once, puts everything in center operation of you, how you see your projector to your projection outside to see everything inside of your system, puts everything in travels to all levels of attraction. All right, Friday in sequence, you guys have your tests and settings. I see it in your emails. Thank you very much, and I travel. So how we're going to get in that screen line adaptation system. Everything earth tone is going to be a central line correlation in high positions. So I'm going to make it easy for you, right? I didn't want to do it in live because it's process of communication setting and track centers. It has a communication settings that puts everything all together to know exactly how to come into more of your individual systems, to really understand how to use that in the projector to your projections, how you see lines of all lines of earth, and that lines of communications and your set position of space. So what we have to truly understand, if anybody understands how to use a projector, the projector has its own film strip, has its own design, has its own system, has its own wheel attractions, right? So what you have to understand, the film itself is running itself. Nothing's disturbing the film, right? So what you have to understand in set position, it has to be set up. To set it up, right, is all of you in the mind. So the mind is already set up the projector itself. Let me say that again. The mind has already set up the projector of the projection by itself. That's mind over matter now. It's so far beyond you can even imagine. So that's all done. That's the mind itself. Now, understanding that in modification is understanding how to connect to the axis of its earth and its axis of its space, and seeing 2 provisional lines of visions in one cycle, in one traction, in one calculations to one locations. 4 lines of panels, 4 lines of track centers, 4 lines of communication setting, and 4 lines of surface, right? 4, 4, 4, 4. Sets communication lines of grounds and 3 triangulation lines of flux. Okay, so it's very powerful when you start to recognize these things. And that position, location, line settings. Your body's now in 10 seconds. Setting lines of tomorrow lines of sequence, lines of set position will be 12. On Sunday, it'll be at 24 seconds. Now the center core system and all team lines of sequence, I'm going to speed up the earth line. So the position locations on Q&A, you guys are automatically will be grounded on your earth and grounded on your space through both lines of communication remote, reviewing at the same time. That will be your upgrade. Stay tuned for more. Setting lines of track centers opens all lines of sequence. Setting lines of high position location to its measure and scale. So what we're going to do in like screen adaptations, I'm going to show you how it's set up through an oscilogics. Now, oscilogic is a reframe calculation screen lines and how you adapt the system location to your systems, all through your computer, all through your binary, all through your vortex, all through travels in position lines of triangulation flux. Setting lines of communication setting all through track locations. The oscilogics is the window graph frame. And we get position lines of high setting. Okay. So you have position lines of attractions, Okay, woven line sequence, set course centers. Okay, go with that line communication system and travel, all right? So we got the brain conversion line connections here and position lines of directions here. And a wheel and line rotation, track location to its settings, right? So it's processing here, the central line, and it's processing here, and communication lines of surface. 8 lines of signals and travel communications of flux and travel, okay? All right, so this is you. This is the film strip of you, right? That's the film strip. Right? It's a continuous force. It keeps going. 2 loops, 2 lines of grounds. Remember the location grid? That's what it is. The synchronized location grid. Sets lines of window frames and travels in point lines and all point graphs and communicates and sending in the oscillogist screens into all of the defrag and fragmentation system. So what you're doing is you're cleansing and you're toxing line course centers. The toxicity is coming out of the film strip of set position. Setting course centers line direct signals into the next frame, okay? So this is the first frame, this is the second frame. Okay, first frame, second frame, right? So you're automatically seeing sequence into 24 signals, all right? So that's already set up, right? So this is already done in the equation. That's already done, right? So the body is positioned up here, starting in one spectrum of light. There's the body and the grounds. That's the Earth, right? So as it's moving, it goes into time jump. Okay, so every time you codify something, you're time jumping, right? You're basically orange, arranging, right? So you're time jumping, 3 timelines, three lines of set position lines of travel. But your body is in a constant continuous force. But what's already done is the film projector that's in its mind and set position location to its system into its window frame. Okay? So it's very powerful when you start to understand how to use it in position of triangulation box frame, and how you see everything in position locations to its window frame track locations and directions, all right? So it's really interesting as you look at it. It's pretty amazing stuff, right? So you're going by frame by frame by frame, millimeters of frame, second meters of frame, centimeters line communication of frames. It's all lines in position of your ruler. Now the ruler kicks in and highlights the channels of operation screen adaptation to a cycle, puts everything location setting and travels. So understanding line position location of picture frame, knowing exactly you have to use a ruler to balance out it out. You have to balance. So you balance out the 4 lines of walls and travel communications, right? Directions. And then you get 2 lines of signals into 2 location grids and settings, okay? And then you get position lines and all lines of wall sequence. These are the docking screens, okay, in the film strip. And set position and ground lines of surface. Okay, inside, okay, is the course centers lines of travel. Okay, so you got 1 position, 2 position, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 frames per second, right? Now, you have to understand how this all works because it's high signaling, high travels. Directing lines of grounds and your towers of communication, see? Your towers. Setting sequence lines of panel. So I have to change the position so you see it lines of communication teleportation. Okay, all right. So how that's set up, you see it on a 4-angle line in communication lines of grounds and set position with powers, whose atmospheres and settings, right? So that is connected to high position to location setting to 144, your server. That's your server. Lines of indicate system lines of travel. 3 lines of signals, 3 lines of perimeters and primers and set position lines of communications. Directing lines of grounds, high lines of signals. Now the position lines of travels crosses lines angles that puts all communication laser lines into high course centers into all course centers of laser grids. Setting lines are highways and tractions. Directing lines and high centers. These comes in all lines into your inhibitors that goes into the auxiliary and set position lines of travel. Setting lines of sequence into 4 line wave cycles in position lines of 48 tractions, 72 measure into 140 set position lines of measure and scale. Setting ground lines of service sets position of 1, 2, and 3 lines of sequence and wall lines that correlates lines of traction. Directing lines of grounds, center lines of surface, and all position location setting, all through travel and track locations. Okay. All right, so we symbolize the cross lines. We cross over this signal in 45 split lines of anomaly. Okay, and then we cross the angles in line connections to line stripping, directing line coding, high center location of code weaving, and track correlations of platforms. Directing lines of grounds, center course system. So the body starts here and setting instructions, right? Starts here, right? So As it's starting here, the seconds, minutes, and hours is changing frame. As it's changing frame, it's changing the core centers of its frame itself. So the position location system is the line screen. Calculates and modify to all communication setting when it comes in your sky grids. It's like track locations, right? Sideline division locations, online signals, comes into the energetic dome and set track locations. Setting lines of sequence comes in all line communication, override line centers, over line communication setting of central settings. The process of communication setting. So this puts position locations. This is your solar generation setting of flux, right? Solar compatible line core centers into position of supercharged superline mechanism line screen adaptation of servers that process communication setting into all with electrodes. Electrons, high core centers of the protons, electrons, neutrons, formulates and simulates the ground lines. So the center core system has a ground lines of service, set lines of alpha, delta, and theta over screen. Directing lines of Schumann residence and travel. It says core lines in high center locations in the opposite location setting, in line communication setting, delta waves and travel communication lines of force recognition. Setting communication lines of grounds over lines of sequence. Setting core centers in the body line. Alignment screen comes in a line signal, okay? So the position of your server sets calculation screen of electrical wire that goes in position lines its body system interactions, right? In the lines of track locations. Has a direct line length, so it knows exactly where it needs to go in a time jump line screen adaptations in flux that coordinates the system location of travel and track locations. So it knows exactly where it goes next, right? The mine itself sets up the position location, the oscillation line core centers, that position location setting and kaleidoscope. Directing lines of signals of window frames that track correlation setting and high position location measure that scales its communication lines of high setting. The process of communication setting opens all communication lines of the body frame. So the body frame knows exactly where to go next and set position to its allocate time frames and line connection setting to its film strip of design. That's how it's set up location in your brain. So the brain basically goes into colorations. Let's get into red line signals, process lines. Let's get it, you get into motion. So you get in motion, it turns red. Okay? Your body turns red, right? So if it turns red, it changes the core centers, electrical settings, and travel. Okay, has a direct line view. Off lines is communication setting. So if this turns red, they all turn red because you're stuck in timeline sequence. 3 lines of measure, 4 lines of scales, right? And you don't want to have that because it's an override and that puts lines of virus under Trojan, setting communication lines of flux over screen. Okay, so to anomalate that, core centers, the decentralized and centralized core centers, to defrag the fragmentation system that all lines of code weaving track line communication setting, set at default lines of channel, default line rotation cycles, reset position lines of travel, copy and paste, able, line core centers, line direct signals and travel, puts position location to embedded, directing lines of signals and code frequency lines of grounds and positioning of a server. All right, so travels in point lines of graph, overline sequence lines of pi, and position on 1 lines of 3 track relates and setting, electrical lines of communication, infusion over screen, directing and high centers of travel. Our case is the center core system. We change the coloration lines into green. Okay, the oscillagics change the correlation setting and travel. Gets into green, center lines of communication setting, sets position lines of tractions, 1 signal, 1 traction, 1 division, 1 location system back in setting. Okay. So in that position, your body can now move forward because it's back in its oscillagics and core centers of balance. The film strip keeps going and travel communication gets out of the glitch in line position of where it is in tractions. All through signal, all through modification. Okay, look at that in tractions. You can continue on to the next path. All right, so it's powerful stuff when you see it through all communications, right? How the brain actually works through circuits, how it works with electrical system, how it works with anomalies, and lines of communication setting to measure and scale on its magnetic board. Electrical lines of communication on its game board, directing lines of signal location to a system all through travel. All right. So as that comes in setting, location setting, the more you get out of resistance, the more you get out of thinking, your body moves to the next locations, which is already there in the mainframe. Okay, so it constantly moves forward, right? So the provision, this here, it constantly changes, right? The coloration lines of your 12 line. So it indicates position lines, electrical line connects to your server. The server changes lines of seconds, minutes, and hours, hours, minutes, and seconds. As you go into 144 flux, the position of the game changes the line screen adaptations, change the colorations, change the time measured and scales. So it changes its position of direction. Okay, all through your central setting on your motherboard. It changes its location. Okay, when it changes its location, it knows exactly where it's going to be next in its equation. But it's a constant, continuous flow of modification. all right? And then you got to set up another film projector and 2 lines of signal, location grid and cycles, 3 line core centers, setting lines of 3 track location lines above and set position of 4, position of below. The 4 lines of signals, lines of settings, and process and position of 7 lines of measure. Sets 12 lines of scale. Okay, sets lines, core centers, line direct signals, and ground lines of surface and clock line communication setting, the body and alignment. It sets lines of track core setting how you see your projector through your projection and light signal location to a system all through travel. Okay, so as it comes into recourse, it reconfigurates the system through retriangulation lines of flux over screen. Okay, gets some modulation lines and ground lines of service, gets into coloration lines, resets its position lines, high center lines of 0, setting lines of blue. Okay, we overline the blue line signals, setting lines of communication setting at 3 lines and position of 2 over measure or scale. All right, sets calculation lines, green adaptations. So you can cross the angles, line conditions to the game board, the next level line condition setting, because the inhibitor changes the core centers lines of travel, direct the lines into position location or cerebral, the correlates the system lines of travel, it allocates the time frame, changes communication lines, but it's a constant continuous flow where the projector, the projection has to keep running its own system. It's in its own space, it's in its own time. Okay, so nothing ever finishes. So it's a constant film that just keeps rotating, rotating, rotating. What changes that is you're not seeing the same vision as when you get up and when you get to sleep. When you're going to sleep and you get up, you should be at the same projector, same projection, at the same time measure, at the same scale, at the same clocking, same level, different frequency. Okay, that's where the inhibitors change. Now the auxiliaries, which is the back input, lines of outline screen adaptation to its audio lines, core centers, lines of travel, sets communications here, overline signals, timeline sequence, over through triangulations to spot lines of screens. Okay, 3 lines of setting and travel. So the body can skip an lines anomaly with 2 places in 1, so 2 frames in setting. Processing communication over lines of sequence, screen adaptations, process here. You color it the line screen adaptations that process lines of time stamping, jump scarring. In that communication catapult and catalyst and screen line adaptation process here and process here. So it's going to be in 2 lines of signals, 2 frames and settings of seconds, minutes, and hours in travel. Sets position lines of setting, process communication over cross location and screen adaptations. 2 places in once, in 1 signal. Right? So I know it's complicated stuff, guys, but what you have to understand is basically your metrical line communication setting, the magnetic force position of the inner cycle to the outer cycle is the outer rim. Directing signal lines is the inner core system to your electrical line grids, so it sets all modification ground lines in position location attractions through your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. All right. So let's get you into signal lines and screen adaptations and all levels. Let's get into purple. So you go from blue, setting core lines of purple. Purple over crosses line screens and downshift lines of anomaly. 3 track location lines, position lines of 4 lines of measure and scale. Electrical line grids and set lines of travel communications, right? So that's 4 lines of communications all at once. And a continuous floor. Time frames, time set calculation. Walking lines, flying lines, and levitation all in signal, all the same time measure and scale. Process lines of the body, knows exactly where it's going to be, and provision lines and position of its alignment, and set calculations setting travel. 1 position, 2 track lines, 3 line division, and 4 set calculations. 4 bodies in sequence and 1 measure, 1 scale, 1 balance, 1 communications, all at once in setting. All right, so you can have a lot of fun once you understand what's going on in attractions. All right, and then you go into the center communication setting, high lines of surface and travel. See it in a 4 different angle of communications, right? So your film strip is going on 4 different directions. 4 different directions going forward, 4 different directions going back, which is north, west, south, and east, northeast, west, and south. It has to get positioned opposite of track. So a film strip is not a continuous flow in one center. It's a continuous flow on both centers. So it's calculation lines of 3 polarities and set position 1 wheel. Sets core centers at 3, 6, and 9. Platforms at grounds, powers, and amplitudes at 3, 3, 3. Set position lines at 4, 4, 4. Set position lines at 5, 5, 5. The metric meters and scales and balance communicates the setting to electrical line grids to set the motherboard to another central setting in track locations. Operation, service, and tractions. All right, I know it's complicated stuff, but it's a lot of fun. But when you look at it from inside and outside, it's fantastic stuff in track location. Understand how to play the game levels and the characters and the players and bring inside the game through your server, okay, of your film strip, of the projection inside and the projection outside that follows you and your server from inside you. The central system, the main system, the correlation panels, the electrical line and high centers, the fusion lines of attractions, direct signal locations, the operation sight lines, high core centers, direct and redirect lines on sight line. Directing lines of set correlations of psi. Psi lines of communication psychological next ascending high center interference, metric meters over scale, electrical lines of panels, and wall sequence lines of communications, all through track location of the game walls and track communications. Hooah! Done my equation. Set position back contraction. Okay? So it's knowing exactly what goes on in your film strip, the design line, but that's how it's set up in the game board. That's how it's set up in your location of your minus space. Okay? Fine. It's like, woo! Way over my head. Okay? But you start off with that track locations from this to that. All right, so setting sequence lines of panel, process communication. Now we got in this system, locations, pyramid line, direct signals, and configuration of face recognition. Very powerful stuff in tractions, right? So remember, guys, the center operation changes the modification lines of grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres. Each line signals operates the locations to all levels of its motherboard, circuitry board, magnetic board, high force line calculations, gravitational board, directing lines of signal board, CPR line core center, CPU board, directing lines and operation line signal line, communication lines of high position lines of travel, direct lines, communication setting the service. Setting lines of tractions opens on line division. Now the high division location comes in the line position location of travel. Directing line communication lines of direct and redirect sets communication high position lines of communication to a system all through calculations. Now, once we get into the position of the platform, it changes all levels and track locations of levels. Multi-levels, dimensional levels, scales, communication lines, and 3 triangulations of flux. Box frames, center line core centers, 3 tractions, and 3 set position location line conditions. Process lines, the server changes communication lines of angles. Angles 1s, angles 2s, and angles 3s, lines of 4 set in the line connection setting. Surface lines of 1, set windows, surface lines of 2, and ground lines of setting attraction. All right? Symbolism, cross line, dimensional doors, overline sequence, time measure, time scales, and 3 track correlations. Sending direct signals and ground lines, operation signals, and wall lines of surface. Indicates line conditions of its platform, of its runway. This sets echo chamber, line screen adaptation of surface interaction. Location lines of centers and communications. All right? Operate the cycles and high direct signals and ground lines of surface. Very complicated stuff when you stand track locations. Line position all levels, window frames, line condition all levels of structures of buildings and travel. Setting communication high centers and opposite direct signals. Actually, it comes in. Platforms on communication lines of dockings, docking lines, centers, open lines of windows, center line communications, center operations setting, process calculation line, dimension line windows, over cross line, inside and outside line, track location, inside position lines of travel. Okay? So there's so many ways to see it on a platform of communication. Okay, guys? Very powerful stuff. So you're here in setting, okay, understanding the next game level and track locations, right? You're there, right? Clocking screen changes line communication setting. Let's say you're in a 72,000 line measuring scale, process lines of 1, process lines of 2, process lines of 3, right? So you're constantly going through seconds, minutes, and hours in position of your projector in your projection location, kaleidoscope, and correlation setting to kilo. Directing signal lines of ground, set course centers of the sun, position of the moon, and 3 track correlation setting to travel. Time measure, time scale, time balance into time zone, no fly zone, high core centers, line high centers. So there is no time measure. There is no time scale. It's all time scale. It's all line communication. It's all line sending, all line rotation. It's all position all at once. Everything's existing all at once, guys. And the more we understand that, then we understand how to use it through a projector to the projection outside from inside our core, which is our server. And that's how it's set up in the mechanisms of the mind, location setting to all lines of core centers and hardware and software that puts everything in track communication, lines of balance and travel in position, location, or game set calculations. Hoorah, and set tractions. All right, so once we get in the center core system, once again, line position lines of high centers, you go through timelines of patterns, process lines, okay? So you have to understand how to get in that positions, right? It's like hopscotch. Okay, you go from there to there to there, right? You go from there and you skip. So time centers, time sequence. I went to that one frame. I went into 2 frame line centers. I went to 3 lines of seconds over frame, position lines of travel. So my mind is in 5 seconds and my position of my body is in 4.1 second. So that's not bad. That's 9 seconds slower in travel. Setting travels at point lines of graph, set position, time center, time sequence, time calculations, time jumping. All right, so it gets more complicated, right? So once it gets into the next level of the game, another portal opens up in sequence. Lines of panel and track correlation setting to travel. Okay? And that center course and brings lines of communication setting to the next platform on the game level. Okay, very complicated stuff, but it's a lot of fun when you understand the lines of communication inside track location to a system. Okay, guys? Very powerful stuff. So it is Doctor Strange more than ever, right? All right, so once we have a central line, bring it back home, back in sequence line communication setting to fail safe. Processing communication, next level of the game. Characters and players and line communication lines, the ground lines of service, almost all track correlation setting to the next game, position, location, and travel, direct signal location to the system. All right, so direct line and links. Now we process calculation setting to our polarities. Center corner lines of left line, right line, course centers lines of north, east, west, and south. Process lines of triangulation 1 into 3 lines of signals, 3 lines of traction, 3 lines of grounds, communication line settings. 1 signal, 2 signals, 3 cross locations. Okay, platforms over E, platforms over C. Setting process calculation lines, directed signals, lines of flux over strange. Calculation chord lines setting to 1 pattern. Process lines of 3 triangulation. Process lines of dimensional doors. Set lines of communication lines. Measure and scale. Process lines indicate position of platforms and track correlation setting. Opposite direct signals and 3 track locations. Okay, center core system and center calculations. Inside and track line communications. All right, so next level of the game. Process lines indicates grounds. Setting lines of sequence, 1, 2, sonar, lines of screen, adaptations of flux over screen. Sonar line, directing signal line, ground lines, core centers, opposite state location, setting high position of travel. Setting communication to high position lines that communication in the system, all right? Okay, flywheel tractions, directing lines over lines of sequence, 1 position over 2 over 3 over setting lines of position of 5. Setting track lines of direct signals of grounds. Setting position of 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 6, and 8, and 12, and 24 line position lines of measure. Scales communication over line sequence and position location of sky grading and sky position. Sky grade line connection setting alpha, delta, and theta and measures and set correlation setting and travel communications. Directing signals, 3 lines of panels, 3 process calculation lines of pyramids and travel. Setting communication lines of ground lines of setting positions. Open line sequence, open line communication setting, astral projection, astral travels, astral connections, all setting. And set track locations, inside settings, right? Process lines of 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Pyramid activation screen, adaptations of flux over screen. Inside track locations. All right. So once we understand the ground lines, guys, it's much easier. So you have a sleeping line. This is you interactions, right? That's you, right? So automatically line screen adaptations. You're processing already in set position. Kaleidoscope kilo line screen adaptations, right? Setting core center into mega bed, core centers into multi-level core centers. Now, mega bed is different from a meta bed. A meta bed has more lines, dimensional lines of scale, more lines of signals, more lines of grounds. It has 3 central settings: earth line rotation setting, process line calculation setting, and 2 lines of track communications. All right, direct lines of links, process lines of 1, process lines of 2, and 3 lines of signals and travel. Okay, so it's really understanding how to get information back in sequence, back in balance, position, location, in existing lines of time, measure, and scale. 4 lines of signals, process lines of 3 track correlations and runways, directing signal lines of grounds. Open line sequence, over line communication setting structure, and time sequence lines of panels, in line continuous structure of your building in set position. Operation settings and lines of communications and lines of surface. Okay? Open line, inline rotation cycles, inside tractions. Okay? Inside position of the simulation travel. Okay, highways, high direct signals, ground lines of surface, set calculations. All right, so we have to really understand how to change the mechanism lines of time and measure and scale through our inhibitors. Settings cross line screens into cross communication setting, into cross referencing. Directing lines of grounds puts everything lines of bounds. So you have an open window frame of grounds, visionary cortex lines, setting communication lines of 3 lines of measure and scale. Okay, looking that way, right? Now position, you're looking this way now. Set position. Both ways of the center line communications. This opens up the window frame and expands it from inside, outside, inside traction. So all you're going to be coming into now is more of an open window of its earth and its space in the set positional levels of measure and scale. Okay? So that opens up more doors, more dimensions, more space, more understanding, more calculations to its system, all through your tractions. Inside and outside, inside of you. All right? So then once you get into that, then you can hit the wall sequence, lines of panels, and then you can process your ceiling. When you get into your ceiling, you get more in your grounds, your powers, and your afterwards, create location and structure of design through a holographic system. Creating lines of wall service, 3 lines of tractions, overlying signals. You can do the wall signals and line communications, all lines of measure. You can do it in all information setting because what you're creating through the ceiling line is your sky grid, sky measure, and sky communication to a system all through travel. Okay? Now, setting course centers opens up the window frame. Center course system enters center line course centers, lines of communication lines of high course centers. Setting lines of ground lines of surface and track correlation system all through travel. Okay? So there's so many ways of looking at this in location setting, interactions, inside, outside, at the same time. The measures on scales, inside, rotation, surface, and travel. Okay? Knowing exactly how to go through the dimensional doors, inside and outside in set position. Okay? Open wall sequence, lines of panels and line screen adaptations. So all dimensional lines of scales. Another wall sequence, lines or panels or ground lines of surface and set position of 3 lines or 4 lines of measurement scale. So it's all communication inside and outside happening all at once. All at once. Grounds of vision, space of vision, all in sequence. So you got grounds of the earth, grounds of the center, and grounds of position locations and track locations to its setting. Okay? Processing that is that one signal, processing that in that line centers, process that in communication lines of 3 set track location lines and set lines of planetary settings. Process lines of indication setting lines of travel, directing lines of flux over screen. Okay? So that position lines to its infinity 8 in 3 lines of cycles, and 3 lines of communication setting to a DNA that travels to the 12 line signals, all existing all at once and all communicating to a continuous flow that high lines of signal to its projector, its projection in a constant continuous flow that constantly gets in position of expanding, exploring, and involving itself in set positional measure that scales its communication lines in high position location to its infinity 8 that changes all communications to high lines of travels and direct location setting into the game levels that you are in set position to its operation. Ooh-ah. Over and over and over in a continuous flow. Okay, not through naughty loop, not through Quebec, just a constant continuous flow of the grounds, the powers, and space. Space, powers, and grounds in a constant continuous flow of traction. Okay, now how you see that through Envision is knowing exactly how to see it through its game. Okay, in your settings, in set position locations to your server. Okay, that's connected to your hardware and your software. All right. So there's 3 wheels of indication setting. One's in the brain, one's in the body, and one's on the grounds. So you got three polarities, 3 lines of signals, 3 lines of powers, and 3 lines of atmospheres in traction. So setting lines in projector, 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 projector in set position, right? Always in opposite direction, coming together. Direct, redirect, direct, redirect, direct, redirect. That's how it's all set up in projection in your minds. Setting lines of sequence sets a platform over lines. And we go in X lines of 1, DX lines of 2. I understand the process of communication setting is to understand how do we see the grounds, how we see the powers, and how we see the atmosphere and the highways at the same time, same measure, same scale, same balance, same communications, same tractions, same levels, different frequency. And all lines of all communications, all at once, simultaneously, continuing, evolving, expanding, exploring. Okay? So for you guys to recognize these things, you have to understand the film strip and direction. So where are you going in set position with calculation and setting? Film strip, right? Setting lines of position, these are the 2 panels of location grid, right? This is the open panel and travel communications, right? This is the open line sequence. This is the line center location to its door. Directing lines of grounds, setting position with its operation setting, your teleportation vessel. Now inside track of correlation high position lines has its 7 lines of its grounds and 3 lines of settings of runways. Directing lines of grounds, open line sequence has another line runway and set lines of space lines of anomaly. Setting course centers is center communications setting highlights the surface and track correlations to its system. Setting communication lines of grounds, Asgard, Bravo, and travel communications and directions. Okay? So wherever you center off, you put yourself in the center operation of your Earth. Now, there's position lines and high transits, setting position lines equals, and screen adaptations of process lines of 1, process lines of 2, and indication lines of 4. Platforms of setting, 3 lines of signals. Okay, ground lines of settings, process 2, lines of 3 track correlations. Okay, so your set position levels, this is where your server is now. Okay, so you can move your server wherever you want in your mind setting. What you have to understand, it's on its own operation system. So as the projector is running its own system, just let it go. Don't think. As soon as you think, you're changing the projector and the projection in your mind. In your seconds, minutes, and miles. Your seconds, minutes, and hours. Your seconds, minutes, and hours in frame. Your seconds, minutes, and hours in frame through traction. So what you have to truly understand in that position location is to do nothing. Nothing. You're just watching a film strip, trying to understand what it is in position of its film. You're trying to understand what's going on with its TV through all lines of a documentary or anything you're watching on TV and all that communication setting, once you understand that, you truly understand its consciousness of what it's showing you through time measure, time scale, time balance of a constant continuous flow that keeps running its own system, that modificates this system, that governs its own space of time. Okay? That's all you're seeing. You're seeing a film strip. You do not touch the film. You do not touch the wheels. You do not touch the strip. You don't do anything. You don't think of anything. You don't coordinate through anything. You don't get a modification of anything of a thought, action, and emotion, because that changes your film strip in your seconds, minutes, and hours in frame. Okay? Very, very powerful stuff, instructions, all right? Platforms of here, platforms of 3 settings, okay? So this is your film strip in a constant continuous flow, right? And this is where it sees outline screen, okay? So it's seeing the window frame now, see? It's the window frame, right? But you also have to go understand you're going position of space and Earth and space at the same time. So Earth is here, space is here, and then you in the center. You are always in the center of operation, always in the center. That's what puts everything all together. So what you have to understand is how to communicate to your all lines of communication setting, your priorities, where you are on your left, or your priorities, where you are on your right, your polarities, where you are on your left, and your polarities, where you are on your right. Understand your positionary foundations, all levels, when it comes in awareness of consciousness and how you see everything of conscious location, it's awareness. So you can go through awareness, through consciousness, right? But you have to understand how to direct and redirect through consciousness of awareness. That puts everything in balance in all communication setting. So once you get into the grounds, okay, very important to understand these things. If we get a track to visualize this like this, I close my eyes, all right? All right, we're in space right now, right? I'm in 5 hours of sequence. I'm in 5 hours in time. I'm 5 million miles away, okay? Now I am where I am in that position, but it's a constant continuous flow that keeps running the system. So that means the film strip is running its own system, its own governing its own space and time. I'm not touching anything information setting. I don't need to formate in that suppositional occasion. I leave it alone. I don't touch the film because everybody that's watching the film is going to turn around and say, hey, what did you do to the projector? Okay, because you're involved with everybody else. So everybody's watching that screen. You're all connected to each other. What do you think in that positional case doing set lines? You didn't think you'd be watching the film, same film strip? You got to get in provision of the consciousness. Where you are in positional location is to leave things alone until you understand the conscious location of its frequencies. So what you're seeing is a direct and redirect view in your positional locations that is a constant continuous flow that keeps you aligned and alert at all times. And how you see that information setting. So when I'm closing my eyes, I'm in set lines of 6 hours now. All right, I've gone through 6 hours. So it's that positional location setting. So to truly understand how to see these things, guys, is turn on the switch. Right? So just flick your eye muscles up. All right, so now you've seen the projector. Now you've seen the projection. Now you see what's going on. So it's in one lines, in one pip, one ground, one surface, one traction, one division, one space, one time, all at once in a constant continuous flow. You have your monitoring system over here. You have your track provisions over here. You have your central systems over here. You have your mainframe over here. You have your server over here, and you in the center operation setting. Working all at once, working track locations in direct signals and ground lines of settings in a constant continuous flow that's in track location and provisions that you're seeing everything from inside, outside, inside of you all at once on a constant continuous flow that keeps moving, shaping, all through traction. It's never at the same frequency in space and time because the mind is getting to higher lines of fast forward communication setting all through tractions. So the reason why I'm closing my eyes is because I also see inside and outside inside of me. So my eyes are always open. They're never closed. And that's what you got to get out of. Okay? What you guys have to truly understand is that when you get in that position, now basically I'm in the earth, right? I'm not in space, so I can be wherever I want to be. So I put my position where I want to be in tractions, right? What you guys have to identify when you're closing your eyes, you turn on the switch. It's like turning on the computer, starting your computer, get in that position, coming into your platforms, coming into all of your applications, coming into locations, say what you want to do in track of lines, position, location, operation, high position, location, electrical line, communication, doing sending, high position, doing service. See, I can see whatever I want with my eyes closed or my eyes open. Nothing changes. So what I'm doing here, I'm seeing the vision, right? Now, when I open my eyes, I'm still seeing the same vision. Right? So I'm still seeing the film projector of the projection of the same film, just different frames. That's the different frequencies. So I'm constantly seeing the same film, but different frames, different episodes. Okay? You guys are seeing that too. Okay? So what you guys have to start identifying in set position is to let everything go. See the film strip of what it is. That's the conscious of its awareness. You see what's covering its own space and time. You don't touch the film projector or the projection. It's showing you exactly what it is in its own system, of its own space, of its own time, in position existing, and everything happening all at once in set position. Okay? So you know exactly what's going on here. You went through 4 hours. Okay, so let's say you just walk 4,000 seconds and 4 million miles seconds per frame. Okay, so that's the connections that bounce. 4-4. It can't be 4-3. It can't be 4-2. Okay, until you understand the earth of you and your habitation and your inhabitation zones. So you got 6 lines of measure, 6 lines of scale, 6 lines of tractions, and 6 locations. 6, 6, 6, 6, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, 5, 6, 6, 6, 6, 7, 7, 7, 7. I go back in 6, back in 6, back in 6, back to 3, back to 3, back to 2, back to 1. That's how a computer operation works. Now it goes through lines of different lines of waves now. Now, once you truly understand that, you're seeing the vision all at once. And how you see that is through all lines of codifications. So when you get up in the morning, you don't see distraction. You just see the same film, but a constant continuous flow of different episodes. Because you constantly are codifying each frame, each second, each minute, each hour that you go through. So when you get in that position, because the mind's already set up the projector, it's already set up the film for you to watch. That's all it is. I'm trying to simplify it, you guys. The mind is already set up, okay, the projector of the projection. Okay, so now you have to see it through the body of alignment because it's a continuous force that's happening in real time. So when I close my eyes, real time, open my eyes, real time, nothing's changed. The only thing that I changed in set position is now I'm thinking, which stops everything at the film projector. That turns it off, and then you have to reset everything back to 0. So you got to watch it all over again. Or it starts skipping, okay? Or it's disassociating with you and not understanding you. So basically, it's on its own setting, of its own cycle, of its own location, of its own space, of its own time, that governs its own setting, of its own projector, of its own projection. That's its own consciousness, guys. Its own earth is its own projector of its projection. Okay? What you have to identify is your center operation of you, the inside to the outside, and how you see things. Okay? But what changes that is you thinking, is hesitating, and separating yourself. Okay? If you let everything go, you start to see the film strip. And every time you get up in the morning, and every time you go to sleep, you're still seeing the same film strip. You're still seeing the same design, but you're seeing different stages. You're seeing different space and time. You're seeing different episodes. Same characters in different levels of communication. Somebody might be here, somebody might be here, somebody might be here. So once you get into that attractions, and once you understand the film strip that's in position, how to work with that, the hard and software location, the mental location, the mind, and location of exceptions, locates to its setting, to its soul, that identifies the body of its alignment, where it's going to be in track correlates and how it's set position, its calculation to its clock system, locates to its foundation grounds. It gets much easier in track locations, how you see your past, your present, and your future. You can alternate that, but you have to mind alterate the system, which means you have to change the frames, which means you have to change the seconds, which you have to change the minutes, the hours, and the structure of the game. Because what you're doing is you're changing the simulator. Now, simulator is basically how you want to see this and how you want to see that, where you want to put this and where you put that. So in that position, that film strip is now changed. It's no longer what you're seeing, right? And that's identifying what you are in position of is a constant continuous flow of just expanding, exploring. And then you come into experiencing. And then you come into new learning. And then you come into buying things new. And then you come to all levels of your position to know exactly what's going on with you, how to operate yourself inside, how to project yourself outside, inside, in set position all at once. Okay? Everything existing, everything evolving, everything expanding, all through timelines, interactions. Okay? So, everybody get a little bit more understanding of how this all works now? So your test is basically how you see yourself, right, in the grounds, and how you see yourself in space at the same time measure. Because all it is a center core system of a figure 8 that's going round and round in set position locations. That's all it is, nothing else. Grounds, powers, and atmospheres. And your server is in the center operation of you. And your highways are 4-line signals, 6 lines, 8 lines through pi. Okay, that's where your server is in center operation. Okay, but your mind is all around in set position, which is inside, outside, inside of you. Okay, the projector itself is its own earth. And 3 lines of signals, has its own center operation of its own system, of its own intelligence, its own set position, right? So you have to understand how to direct and redirect in that position, its calculation setting. The process that is all levels of yin and yang. It's a constant continuous wheel that keeps rotating its system, location, and setting. Setting core centers lines of light, setting core lines of communication lines of black, directing lines of light, directing lines of black, over lines of black, over lines of light, setting lines of webbing to the left, left lines of line position of right, set core centers lines of travel, direct lines of 3 lines of flux, core lines of travel, communication setting, 3 lines of signal, 3 lines of outset position. So once you get into triangulation, you can do this in system. Triangulation box. You start with that. 3 lines of inside, start with that location. Triangulation 3, triangulation lines of 3, lines of 4. So triangulation 3, 3 triangulation lines of 5. 3 lines of signals, add 5 lines of signals, 2 lines of track correlation setting, time sequence lines of 0, 1. Okay, so that puts into another film strip of design. Waving seconds, minutes, and hours in frame. Sets core centers, put 5 here, 2 here, and set position over 0, 1 over here in the next frame, the set position of its film. Okay, that's changing. That's seeing what you already know through memory. But you've got to get out of memory, okay, especially when you wake up. Wake up is the highest formation of the distraction. It's the highest frequency of distraction, which is low spectrum. The lowest spectrum is beta. That's beta wave over line signal location over pi, lines of alpha, alpha beta. It's got to be in track correlations of balance, communication lines of film strip of design that puts modification ground lines, core centers, line communication lines of travel, has a high line signal location in the system of the calculation setting. Is it a coincidence that my phone is lines of 24 lines of volume in position of 12 lines of measure? No. See? My phone is communicating with me as I'm communicating with my phone. It's same signal, same balance, same tractions, same level, different frequency. That's all it is in communication in GOD. All right, so directing lines of signals, ground lines to set position locations coming in this line position. Okay, knowing exactly how to get in that configuration system. How to see tractions, direct lines of lights, and position lines of dark webbing. Okay, center core center lines of the Earth, center core lines of the Earth, and position the opposites of Earth. All right? So what you understand, the planetary lines of transits over equal, line position of equal, line position of equal. Okay, platforms of 1, platforms of 2, all right? Platforms of 3, platforms of 4, okay? Platforms of 5, okay, and platforms of 6. Okay, different levels, different track locations. Center operation lines of 1, center operation lines of 2, outline signal locations. There's Saturn. Direct lines of Jupiter, overline cross location, line position location, there's Pluto. Directed signal lines of, oh, see that disappear. Set position lines, Mercury lines of core lines of 3 lines of panels, line rotations, high position battery core centers, lines of negative or positive over negative, line position of center operation screen. Mercury, set track location of system. 3 planets in 1 cycle, right? All through a figure 8 rotation. All through a figure 8 rotation in set tractions. And a continuous force of its Earth powers and space and time measure and time sequence lines of panel and operation system all through consistency and all in connection setting. All in set position, right? So the more you understand, the more you less understand, the more you know nothing. So it's very powerful when somebody comes up to you and they give you a formula and say, that's not how this works. And basically that comes in provisional cases. What do you mean that's not how this works? This is it. This is the formula. This is the equation. You know nothing. So what do you say to them? You say, you're right. You're absolutely right. I know nothing, but I am the mass of everything I see. That's the balance. You start to see the eyes of everything in a constant continuous flow because you know what you're seeing from inside that projects and projection outside of you. So once you stand that, you stand the 3 of the grounds, 3 of the powers, and 3 of the atmospheres, and 3 lines of space. Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth 4. Okay? Set position lines 0 gravity, set position the atmospheres, set position locations into bioatmospheres, setting total correlations to stratospheres, location setting to the Branium atmospheres and track communications. Setting lines of 3 signals, 3 lines of grounds, 3 lines of service, 3 track locations in the system. Okay? So you see it how you want to see it. So when somebody comes up to you, you know exactly what to say to them. You're right, I know nothing, but I am the mass of everything. They'll get very confused. because they don't understand their self inside line. See, that's where everybody is now. See, it's about understanding how to keep yourself in balance of your inside, knowing exactly how to keep yourself from outside, but it's all of us you inside happening all at once. Interactions, okay? That's how all this is set up. It's set positions to your film strip, a set design, okay? All right? So once you get into that, your foundations and settings starts expanding, okay? Your windows start expanding, okay? Your triangulations start expanding, okay? Everything just gets bigger and bigger over time, right? Your triangulations get bigger and bigger, right? They can get bigger or they can get smaller, right? Knowing exactly how to connect from inside and outside at the same time measure. Scales, communication, high position of grounds. Pyramid screens, 3 lines of signals and 3 lines and 4 lines of flux, 45 angles and travels. There's your platform communication, next game level and track location. That's the next game level. That's all it is. And then you're here, trying to understand the game. What's going on with the game? Set position, right? Try to understand what's going on, right? So you're bringing a thought. Oh, you brought somebody in your game right there. Do you know who that is? That's somebody. You better know who that is. Because right away, it changes the coloration lines of the screen. Right now, the set position locates on the level is black. Okay, the square root, the set position of the triangulation box is black. Uh-oh, it's in sonograph interference. So that position location line settings, you got to change that to our communication lines, take them off the board. Gone through equation. Not there anymore, right? You move them over to visual lines of high sending, high line communication lines of low configuration, set locations, side position locations, measure and scale communication, high position travel. Set calculation lines, back in frame, back in position. There it is. Gone through equations. Ooh, not there anymore. Because you didn't get emotional. So every time you get emotional, you're bringing somebody on your game. Every time, every measure, every scale. It affects your film strip. It affects your correlations. It affects your balance. It affects your flywheel. It affects your polarities. It affects your towers. It affects everything in your portals and stargates. Understand that, people? Now, if we understand that, then we understand the next levels of the game without thinking of anything of emotion. Okay? All right. That's it. See you in 5.